Hello, and welcome to this episode of the HSCG Master Maker podcast. I am here with Lisa Lester from Candle Science. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, happy to be here, Leigh.
Great. So, we are going to talk today about probably the most near and dear subject to every maker's heart, and that is scenting and fragrances, essential oils, fragrance oils. We all know that we have entire shelves dedicated to fragrances, essential oils in our shops. And it's probably one of the best parts of the shop is creating those specific scents for your business. So I'm really excited about this topic. Let's dive right in. I'd like to get a little background for our listeners who don't know you first. So your journey in soap making began over a decade ago when your mother introduced you to the craft. So what about that first experience really hooked you?
The whole process came around very strangely, especially because I was never somebody who cared at all about like Bath and Body Works or fragrances or cosmetics or anything like this. It came about because I started dating someone who had skin sensitivities and was
Oh,
buying goat's milk soap. And I was like, well, hey, my mom does this. I've learned to bake and cook for my mom. I'm like, let me go see how hard this is. And it was so much fun. I, of course, immediately did all the wrong things. I put my fragrance in the red Solo cup, which ate through and fell across my
oh,
countertop. If there's something silly to have done, I have done it. But then somehow that turned into I had a closet full of 400 bars of soap, like you
nice.
do. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah. I always love to hear people's like how they got into soap making because everybody's stories are different, but they always have what I've noticed is there's some similarities, and it's always skin sensitivity or I'm crafty person, or I always hear this one too. Like I started a goat farm and now I have too much goat milk. So what can I make it into? But I love hearing how people get into it and you learning it from your mom is really cool.
I'm
So
definitely really grateful to that too.
oh, I bet. I bet. I mean, that's a great story to tell. I learned it from my mother. So, how did your early passion for soap making evolve into a professional path?
It honestly is a weird spiral. Again, started making soap for my husband and then I got really into it. And I was not the most interested person in math or chemistry as a kid. I'm somebody who I need to know the why, and soap does that for me. Like the math and the chemistry involved, like I had something hands on that I could go back and refresh those skills. And I really enjoyed it. As I got more and more involved, I launched into a business, had so much fun with that. I was actually a very shy person and very much an introvert. I was really nervous about going out and doing craft shows, and the community, not just the people who I was selling to, but the other vendors were just so amazing and passionate about what they were doing. It really was just this amazing experience for me of like finding my people. So if anybody out there is listening and you haven't done your first craft show yet, it's fun. Like highly recommend it, even if you want to just be an online seller. It's an amazing experience. And so after about 5 years, I felt like I needed to level up in some way. But again, I was kind of shy and I was also working a full-time job like most of us do. And I just wasn't sure what that next step was. And we had this debate between, am I going to go wholesale? Was I going to teach? I decided that all of that was overwhelming and that maybe I should step back and do my master's degree in business and learn more. And of course, that didn't quite pan out the way I thought it would. Instead, I got a master's in marketing, which is how I ended up at Candle Science.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very indicative of a lot of people that I talk to. Like the way that people get there, it's never a straight line. It's always, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. And then you end up where you're ultimately supposed to be. And I can totally relate to your math issue. I was a science major in college and I despised math and I just kind of would trudge through it, but I loved physics because physics is math, but it like makes sense to me. Just hearing your story, it's so similar to other people's stories. And I totally agree with you about going to craft fairs too. That is your people. And even introverts like us find our people and we're able to speak to them and speak the language that they all love, which is making products. So let's get into the scent blending, which is what we have you here for today. So you've blended scents for years. When you
Mhm.
start working on a new blend, what is your creative starting point?
So that really is just going to depend on why I'm blending the scent. If it's for me, I definitely go mad scientist. Like this is one of those things where I feel like you should learn the rules and then That way you can break them.
Right.
And so if it's for me, I generally have like a base fragrance that I just want to tweak. If you're going to do this, for instance, scent blending for a business, they want a signature scent. I recommend starting with a mood board because fragrance is so personal and it's so hard to figure out like, is the rose that you smell like grandma's rose or like a sexy rose? Like what does that mean? And
Right.
so really visually piecing together, like everything from like abstract colors to fields to oceans can really help you pair up, sort of get that mind meld going with your customer and grow from that.
So interesting when you're saying that. My brain is turning here and I'm thinking about the rose. Does it smell like an English rose or a romantic rose or a sexy rose? And that really also depends on the person smelling it, correct? Because we
Mhm.
all have our own
Absolutely.
experiences and what. But you're trying to get it as close to the point of, well, most people are going to find this to be this, like the sexy rose. Correct.
Absolutely.
Right. When you're using scent and soap, how does your approach differ from using scent and candles and like other personal care products?
So, soap is absolutely my passion. Everything else came later, and I'm really grateful for it because I do find soap to be the most finicky. And so I generally have multiple, like, say I want to do an apple blend, I'll have multiple apple scents and I test them individually first. Because if one accelerates or one discolors more or, whatever oddity happens, then I know I can switch to another one. And so really I want to know what the performance is of all of those ingredients that I want to use, of all of those fragrances before I do my master blend.
Are you just doing little small batches, like little
Mhm.
tiny?
For me personally, I found like the 1 pound silicone mold works pretty well.
Right.
I know that there are people who do smaller tests, but I really want to focus. Like I really like to do fun designs and lots of bright colors and things.
Right.
And so 1 pound for me is as small as I go, just because I really want to see what that acceleration is going to be like.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, IFRA matters so much.
And just for
So
our listeners who may not know, can you explain just what you mean by IFRA?
sure. IFRA is non-political, not fragrance house backed regulatory body that helps the fragrance industry figure out what ingredients are safe to use where.
Okay.
And so there's an attached to reputable fragrance companies, you'll find an IFRA sheet that explains to you that you can use, say, 6% of the fragrance in soap, or it's not safe at all for lotion, or 100% in candles. And also to call out if it's 100% in candles, that doesn't mean just stick a wick in and light it. That means you can use up to that amount in candles. And so basically, the purpose, IFRA, is to keep us safe in our homes while we're making fragrance.
And just because something is safe for use in a candle doesn't mean it's safe for use in a topical product like a lotion or a.
That's correct, and so it's also really important to plan ahead, especially if you're doing, say, a signature blend for a business, what their final products could be. Because if you give them a fragrance that smells great in a candle, but they actually wanted it in a lotion or a room spray, you'll have to start all over.
Right, right. So when you are trying to do for a business, do you try to come up with scents that are kind of universal that you can use in different products?
I definitely do. I normally do go through a brief process and try to call out it. They generally have an idea already of what they want. Like we want our real estate homes to smell like cookies. How can we do that? So you can
Right.
optimize for reed diffusers or room sprays, and then hopefully still come up with a way to do other products with it to make your recipe work in other formats just in case.
Right, right. So when you account for ways that like cold process, hot process, and melt and pour bases interact differently. How do you account for that when you're, interacting with FOs and EOs? So FOs and EOs for our listeners to know, I'm going to use those acronyms. Fragrance oils are FOs and essential oils are EOs. So how do you, account for the ways that it changes?
Well, full transparency, I actually avoid essential oils unless it's for home use. So I'm going to defer essential oils to a more experienced person. In my background, just for clarity, that was a personal choice for me. There's nothing wrong with essential oils. But when I was selling, I experienced a lot of people who were coming to me and they wanted to talk about the medicinal uses of essential oils, which, as from a maker perspective, isn't legal. That if we start talking about our products that way, that then classifies them as a drug. And we have a family joke. I'm from a long line of people who get caught when we do something bad. So I just decided not I didn't wanna tangle with that, and I made friends with other soapers when I was at shows, and if they had essential oils, I would just pass that business along, which honestly helped me build I feel like a good reputation with my co-vendors.
Luck here
So
because I actually had an entire podcast that I did with Hannah Tisserand, and she was all essential oil. So we can totally focus on fragrance oils with you.
that's
Not a problem.
fantastic. I completely geeked out and met her at the last soap conference,
Mhm.
and she was so nice,
Yes.
and she was so interested in smelling fragrance and just chit-chatting, like, it was I fangirled a little, I have to
Yeah.
admit,
Yeah,
I was
she was
super
great, and
impressed
she
by
knows
her.
her stuff when it comes to essential oil, so I'm
Yeah,
happy to focus, though, on fragrance
okay.
oils, so let's do that.
And I've completely lost track my train of thought. What was your original question, Lee?
So we were talking about, do you count for the ways that cold process, hot process, and melt and pour bases interact differently with fragrance oils?
Yes. So there's so many different angles I feel like I could come at from this. Like, why am I making this product?
Mhm,
And if I can get away with any product, whoever I'm making this for doesn't care if it's cold process, hot process, or melt and pour, then I'll just pick the best base.
mhm.
Having said that, I'm very biased to cold process. If
We all have
somebody's
a preference,
yeah,
definitely.
hot process for me personally, I generally only use if I'm doing an alcohol-based soap.
Mhm.
Or it's something that I know is going to seize or discolor and I want that rustic look.
Right.
So I do make hot process just for very specific cases. Otherwise, I pretty much default to cold process whenever possible because just for my personal style, I really do prefer doing more intricate designs. I like playing with color. And that just works better for me. I used to very much be on like the snobby train of melt and pour is so beneath me. Like, no, melt and pour is also very hard.
Yeah, you
Is
have to have really mad respect for a melt and pour soap artist. It's a whole different
yes.
level, you know? I have total respect for that, and we always say that too with the soap guild, we're like, "All soap making is soap making."
It
Mhm,
absolutely is. I have a coworker here who works in our lab, Nicole, who is just makes amazing melt and pour soaps, very
mhm,
intricate. She hand paints them.
mhm.
I can't do what she does.
I know, they're beautiful.
Um,
They're absolutely I am in the same. I
yeah.
was always a cold process maker as well, and mine was very sort of basic rustic looking. So I actually had a friend who made melt and pour, and we would trade products. So I could sell her beautiful melt and pours. She could sell my cold process.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I'm pretty much just cold process all the way whenever possible.
So let's get into the when you're sitting down to scent blend, and we talked about it a little bit, but what are the rules for scent blending? So do you have some rules you stick to?
So yeah, and this is something that we can definitely reference in the show notes, but there are fragrance wheels out there that you can use. I would say that no one fragrance wheel is better than another. Candle Science, we have, I sort of jokingly call it like the Fisher Price version. It's very simplified. I think we only have 10 categories on ours. But I think I've seen scent wheels out there with like 24. It gets pretty narrow. And basically, it looks very similar to a color wheel
Mhm.
and it helps you match up floral notes going with fruity or fruit and spice or wood and floral, and it just helps you kind of gauge what might be safe to mix with a scent based on that fragrance's category.
Give me
And
an
as
example, just so we're going along here. Give me an example of what's not safe. Like, what would be a not safe blend?
well, I'm kind of in the category that just because the wheel says that you shouldn't do it doesn't mean you really shouldn't. Like I
Okay,
like am a mad scientist with it, but in general, let me pick a really stinky one.
good, a really stinky one.
Really stinky.
Like when you were a kid, like a teenager, and you wanted to come up with something gross in the kitchen, you're like, "Ooh, yeah, milk and orange juice and egg and soy sauce."
Right. I'm gonna say, what if you mix like I don't know, basil and eggnog. Like, that's
That sounds
mixing an
bad. Mhm,
aromatic with a gourmand, does not work. I know one of our customer support team used to keep a board in their office that had customer scent blends that
mhm,
people write in and give us, like, "I made this terrible mistake.
mhm.
This is what the blend was." And, we have one that we call the hangover that's whiskey and cake. I appreciate the bad smells as much as the good smells,
Right, right.
but having said that, you might blend a gourmand and an aromatic that works really well together. Like, it's just because the wheel says you shouldn't, doesn't mean you shouldn't, I
So
guess is
the wheel's kind of a
yes.
guide, but it's also you can push the boundaries of that guide. So sort of like the Matrix, like you're in the Matrix
Yes,
and you can come up with different, gravitational rules that you can break and stuff. So same with the scent wheel.
absolutely, you have an option to acknowledge that there is no spoon.
Right. Very good. Very good. So all of you matrix geeks out there, you're welcome. All right. Is there a specific framework that you stick to when developing a blend? And you spoke about what are you doing it for, right? So now you've decided what you're doing it for. So what's the next step?
Let me use let's do this as a signature blend for maybe a customer as a
Okay.
just as an example because I feel like it really just depends. And so again, I would come back to the mood board and a product brief as a starting place. And when I say product brief, like it sounds very formal and very official. You're
Mhm.
taking notes. Like you're just very structured like this is my goal is to make a beautiful hotel themed spa fragrance
Right.
and then, attach your mood board to that and work with your customer. You can either both do a mood board or have your customer start and say they come back to you with like photos of like citrus and ocean waves and then you can sort of go through that and pick out well, like for the ocean waves, I want to use a salt of the sea fragrance. And go back and forth like that. To me, that's really where the structure comes from so, like, we have the framework of the fragrance wheel, but you're gonna develop your own structure for actually creating your blend.
Right. Right. So you must have lots of notes too that you've taken over the years and that you've learned along the way.
I am a huge note taker. It is an obsession. I very much color code things.
Good, good. So, okay, so what are some of the biggest mistakes that makers make when they're blending scents?
Again, I'm gonna say all of these things, and I've made all of these mistakes before, so no judgment. But blending over fragrances that are already really complex, I feel like is something that happens very frequently. Not all fragrances are meant to be blended. I'm trying to think of a really good complex one, but every now and then, I know from a candle science side, we put out something that really mimics like a fine fragrance or a cologne. And personally, I find those very difficult to blend. They were already made as a finished product versus something that's just like a basil single note or even like a snickerdoodle fragrance. The more complex the fragrances already are, I feel like the trickier it is to blend.
I want to ask too. So you're blending a scent, and there must be a point that you get to where you're like, this is perfect. If I add anything else to this, it's going to make it something else, right? So, how do you have the discipline to say to yourself, okay, I'm done. I can't add any more? When we're talking about artistic, creative type of mediums, there's always that point where you shouldn't go any further. So, how
Mhm.
have you trained yourself to get there and not go beyond it?
I actually really still break things all the time,
Okay.
and that's why my notes are so important because I always wanna keep pushing, like, "This smells amazing, but what if I did one more step?" And so before you add in whatever that next note is, write down what you're doing for each step, like,
Right.
just like you would for your batch records, like, "This is trial 1, this is trial 2." And from a cost savings perspective, you don't need to be whipping up 1-ounce drams or something to do this. I start with fragrance blotters to keep expenses down. And then when I actually find a blend that I think works well, then I'll start moving into doing small drams, just like the little like 10 milliliter things to just drop at a time. Um, so that you can, actually dip it onto a blotter and be like, yes, I think this is it, and move your way up from there. So that way you're not spending a small portion while you're working on your blend.
Good advice, good advice. Let me ask you too also about so your sense of smell, I'm assuming is pretty advanced. Like I have a really good sense of smell. It's a curse sometimes in an airport or an elevator. Not such a great thing sometimes.
Yeah.
But for when I was making product, it helped me. So do you have a strong sense of smell and how do you keep your nose from getting saturated when you're working?
I think I have a pretty reasonable sense of smell. My husband is a mutant, and I swear he should have been a perfumer now that we're doing so much of this. Like, he missed his calling. But in comparison, I think I have a reasonable sense of smell. And it's also, I feel like, been tuned a little bit from working here and learning from my coworkers, the creative director that does fragrance. 5 years ago, I might not have been able to pick out a hint of musk, but now I can. It's like drinking wine.
Right,
You know,
right.
I started with Boone's Farm and things have changed since then. I really just feel like, things sort of develop over time.
Very good. So, what does your collaboration with marketing and product development teams look like during a new product launch?
So, I just mentioned Jen, our creative director, and so first I have to call out that our product development team has there's think 6 of us now. Jen focuses on fragrance, Carrie is our sourcing director, does containers and focuses on our kits, and then, of course, we have Todd, who is our official candle scientist and our chemist. He's very patient with all of our silly questions. And so most of what I do here, I really feel like I've learned from them. I came in from a weird space as a maker, and they already had pretty heavy industry experience. And so as a product marketing manager, I run sort of a balance between helping them stay structured and organized and then being a voice for the customer. And I absolutely stalk different social groups. I read our reviews obsessively. I'm basically looking to see what products would help our customers solve problems. And I feel like that can feel a little bit awkward for a maker because you're so passionate about what you're making and you're making something, pretty and gorgeous, but you're still solving a problem by
Right.
making your products. And that's really what we're doing. Like we're figuring out how to find that problem and then use your product to fill that need. And so I could suggest something like we need a wax with a new ingredient that might increase the hot throw, or we're always like on the lookout for the next miracle candle wax because it can be so frustrating if you love soy but you hate rough tops. Like
Right.
that's just how soy is. And then I also put together a lot of slide decks, sort of like the information hub between departments in a new product launch, and it could be anything from we're going to have a new lotion base and we need the engineering team to figure out how to dispense it, or meeting with customer support and working with them to make sure that we have customer questions addressed in advance.
Excellent. So, how do trends in customer behavior or seasonal demand influence the scents that you develop?
We do so much trend research. It is the weirdest thing to me sometimes to like look and realize that I'm doing this because again, this I was not passionate about fragrance as a kid. But I've learned a lot from my coworkers. Most fragrance trends we found really come from like the food market first, food and beverage market. And so we've actually gone to like natural food expos to see what colors and fragrances and things are trending. And it's been so interesting to see, I don't know, pickles. Pickles have just been really big lately,
Really?
and now we're seeing
Pickles.
pickle yeah, now
Wow.
we're seeing in food, and now we're starting to see people ask for pickle fragrances or, vegetable fragrances in general have
Right.
been rising for the last few years, and it just keeps going up. Bath and Body Works had a tomato candle out this year that just sold
Really?
like hotcakes. Yep.
Wow.
It's just so interesting to see how those things progress. And then, of course, they're working normally 2 years ahead or so they start, which is also, I feel like, a unique challenge when you're launching products. Tomatoes mushrooms are a great example. I love stinky fragrances.
What is an
Shrooms.
example of a stinky fragrance to you?
I guess things that other people may find offensive, like a mushroom fragrance because it smells dirty, or a petrichor because you can look. I love reading reviews. People post the best reviews, like this smells like a graveyard. It does. It's amazing.
Right.
Like there's a weird sense of nostalgia with that too. And I might not want a straight petrichor candle, but if I put like a little drop of that dirt smell in with like some pine or something, like it really enhances the scent. Or wild experience with a fragrance house. They went through a trend of putting deeply unpleasant smells with nice things, and sort of the basis was using, like, the unpleasant smell to enhance the good thing, and the first I didn't I admitted I wasn't paying attention right away. We had just sat down, and they're passing out blotters, and they handed me a blotter, which I just smelled instead of listening, and it was body odor. It was
Ew.
synthetic body odor. And I just what is happening right now? But having said that, when they gave us blends, they were completely right, and, like, a little bit of that with, like, something cologne, like, there's something weirdly sensual about it. It was a trip. So, like,
Wow.
you can really do a lot with offensive smells.
Offensive smells. It's funny, it reminds me of I'm gonna reference another pop culture. It's, Bertie Bott's Every Flavored Beans from Harry Potter.
Yep.
You know how you get the earwax one or the vomit one or whatever. So tell me one of your recent favorite blends and what kind of it made up.
Recent favorite blend. I am probably the most obsessed right now with our blending elements. And we have a new blending elements collection that we released that I love to play with. And I am still stuck on moss element and basil element. And they're basically single note fragrances that, yeah, they do just fine on their own, but they're great for blending. And I am always on the lookout for like a good strawberry basil. I am someone out there is gonna scream at me for saying this. While our strawberry fragrance is very good, it's very jammy, and I want a truer strawberry, like, from the garden. And
Right.
so I've been working through lots of blends from other companies trying to find the right strawberry for that basil, and then mixing in, like, green leaves and just trying to, like, get this balance. And then also with basil, I am deeply in love with a Jo Malone fragrance that was discontinued, Basil and Neroli, and it was my first, like, big girl purchase of fancy perfume.
Okay.
And I'm just, like, absolutely obsessed with it. They discontinued it. I still have some, and I'm trying to use our basil element to sort of come up with my own blend so that when I run out, I can have more. So
Oh,
those are probably my I'm like, "Surely I can get somewhere close to this and make my own perfume."
other than strawberry, is there, like, another anything that has, been eluding you that's just driving you nuts that you really wanna try to nail down?
I think not for me personally, but I've had a lot of people over the last year looking for like a metallic this is really again, really I just like the weird things, but like a
Mhm.
metallic or like a blood scent, and they're not yeah, like I said, it's weird it sounds weird, but it's not because they're like, "I want a blood candle." Like, they're looking for that note of, like, iron to enhance a blend,
Right.
and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't think about that, and when you think about purchasing scents, you're not like, "Ooh, I wanna purchase a body odor scent or a blood
Right?
scent." So, what does how does scent become part of a brand identity?
I mean, that really starts with the maker themselves, in my opinion. Like, what is it that you want to convey? And for me, I like to remind people to go back to emotions. When you're thinking about fragrance and emotions in general, like you're leaning into nostalgia. Like, I might smell my grandmother's perfume.
Right,
And I might not even realize that's what it is, but all of a
right,
sudden you get maybe a little sad, or a mom's apple pie, and you're like, gotta have, like those all trigger things in you, and so I think it's really important that when you're looking for a signature blend that you lean into those emotions. And it doesn't have to be nostalgia. It could be as simple as you really want people to feel energized when they come into your space. You want them to be happy, and so you want some ginger. You might want a fruity floral mixed in there, so you're like creating like a lighter atmosphere, something fun and playful. And so I think those are things that you really have to think out is how do you want people to feel when they're smelling your fragrance?
So when you're a maker and you have a business, do you have to have scents that sort of complement each other? Or is there any rules for that for your line? Or can you just kind of go for it and do whatever you want?
I feel like that's definitely down to how you both brand and market your products. I do think that you can do almost anything you want, but personally, I would recommend breaking them into collections or themes because it'll make it easier for you to talk about them as collections. I know there's been some recent indie nail polish companies doing like Avatar The Last Airbender releases, and that's how they're grouping the colors for their nail polish so
Right.
that that's what you can see like that's what their inspiration's coming from, and then they're also drawing in that audience. And so collabs are a great way for you to expand and play with different fragrances, or you can lean into like holidays or
Yeah,
something.
and it's funny too, I had a business and I was a maker, and used to do seasonal scents, and they sell like hotcakes until January. It's really funny. In January, you can't get rid of I mean, so I would always have to plan because I'd be like, "I can't be left with any of this stuff because it's not gonna
Yep,
sell." People would get so sick of it.
absolutely.
They're like, "Nope, I'm done with that." So,
I feel like
what
that makes January such a struggle sometimes. So, there's like this weird season both for makers and for us as a fragrance manufacturer that granted most of us take from like Christmas time to like mid-January. I think a lot of us are taking a break and trying to
Yeah,
recover from
yeah.
Q4, but
Mhm.
you still have to pick yourself up and start selling. But people are pretty over their holiday gourmands in January and February. And so I always kind of consider it like this weird gray period of like, I'm not ready to smell lily of the valley yet. Like, what do we want?
Right. Not quite, especially like where I live. I live in upstate New York, there's still snow on the ground and can't sell your cinnamon and your pumpkin spice anymore, but people aren't ready for lilac or that kind of thing yet either.
Right.
So what should makers consider when attempting to develop a signature blend?
Again, I feel like it really comes back to the purpose of that signature blend. I would really hold into what emotions you want people to experience because that's going to be what brings them back to you. Leaning into a story with those fragrances can be very helpful. I might smell something seaside related, something beachy, and I might think of the best vacation of my life, but somebody else might think of a funeral. And it really helps to, write out the story with it, especially if you're an online seller. So I do feel like it's a huge challenge, especially for the introverts who think that craft markets might not be for them. How are you supposed to sell a fragrance that no one can smell?
Right.
Like that's a huge challenge.
I just read this article and it kind of stuck with me about how people forget compliments within 30 days, but they remember critiques or insults or things for years and years, almost never letting them go. So if you let's say you're a maker and you're bringing out your signature scent and 20 people love it and then 2 people don't. Can you say any words of encouragement to ignoring the 2 people that don't? Because I know as a maker myself, when somebody was critical of something, I got overly critical. I would smell it again and go, "Huh, I can see what they're saying." So how do you kinda keep your head above that and just say, "Okay, no, I'm doing the right thing here. I gotta
Mhm.
stick to what I'm doing."
I think it's really important to also, when you're making these blends, to think about who your target audience is.
Right.
And we definitely do that internally. For instance, I really do not care for most gourmands, and I don't like vanilla. And vanillas are generally some of the most popular fragrances out there,
I
and
know, I
so
don't
I've hit a
either. I don't
point,
like it either.
right?
Same.
I always joke about like cookie scents and stuff. It just smells like sadness because where's my cookie? Like it
Yeah,
just
I
doesn't
can't eat
work for
this.
me. You have to stop and recognize that there are others who enjoy these scents, and that's your audience. And just because, one or two people don't like it, well, were they looking for a vanilla fragrance? Did they want a scent that smells like cookies? You're never going to be able to make everybody happy. And that's why it's so important to really figure out who it is that you want to buy this item that you're going to make anyway.
Yeah, because people have their own experiences, and
Mhm.
they're bringing a lot when they're smelling something. For
Yeah.
example, I cannot stand the smell of truffle oil, like, in a restaurant because I got food poisoning once from it, so now I smell it and I need to run for the door,
Yep.
whereas most people are like, "Oh, truffle, I love truffle fries and truffle," and I'm like, "Ooh," so it's that
Yeah.
thing, you can't please everyone, and everyone's bringing their own sort of baggage to
Yeah.
what they're smelling, right?
Yeah, I actually saw somebody this morning on social, I thought asking a really interesting question. She said she had a comment from a customer saying that she burned her candle and it had a really light smell. Like it wasn't no, she said it wasn't overwhelming. And it wasn't a negative. It was just a statement. And so this person was asking, is this bad? And there are lots of people who like soy specifically because the hot throw isn't so strong. Like not everybody wants a Bath and Body Works candle that's just in your face. And it's just that breakdown, like you could see the insecurity, which is completely valid. Like, did I do something wrong? Are they happy with this? No, like they might be enjoying it perfectly. Like lots of people they want like an undersmell. Like they want their room lightly scented. They don't want to
Right.
like actually be in a
You don't
hot
wanna get
kitchen.
hit. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's good advice too for people. It's just we scrutinize as people and as makers and as women, we scrutinize everything that people say. We scrutinize and, like and try to figure out, "Okay, do I have to change something? Do I have to fix something?" But you don't. You have to just stick to your plan, stick to what you know is correct, and go for it, and you're just not gonna be able to please everybody. That's just the thing.
Absolutely. Sometimes you really do just have to let it go. And if you ever need a boost about your own skills, go out to a Walmart or a Target and look at
Yeah,
the candles on the shelves because you are being picky about things that no one will ever notice but you.
right,
People are going out and buying candles that are very poorly made by
right.
your standards as a maker because now you know what you're doing. And so honestly, you're probably just fine.
So, okay, so let's leave it with one thing then. So what are you working on right now? Give us a little taste of what you're working on right now.
I am super excited because my coworkers, Carrie and Todd, are letting me sort of run point on a little project that I can't give you the details about, but
Okay.
I met a manufacturer and this is the first time that I've really gotten to like do the creative brief for a new product and specify what I want and put together my own testing teams. And of course I have their supervision because I am new to this, but it is so much fun. It really feels like me sort of expanding into a new career space to get to work with chemists this way. So it's couldn't be more exciting. I highly recommend if you ever get a chance to work for a soap and candle company as a maker, it's a hoot. Highly recommend.
What scents are on your desk today? Like, give me some ones that you're using today.
Dahlia Noir We just recently released Luminaries Only for the Moment, which is a rewards tier for us. I love it. It's like a fruity floral. I think we sort of themed it after like France and like Midnight Passions, and it's very romantic, but it is just amazing in bath and body. And then I'm also on a Hinoki Cypress kick. It's not really a Christmas scent, but it's still sort of like piney and sort of spa-like, but also sort of has like this peppery is maybe not the right word, but sort of like I hate to use the word stinky because it sounds bad, but I'm just like it just
Right,
has this
right.
interesting undertone that's very soothing to me. And so I'm kind of running that balance right now of do I want to feel uplifted with my Dahlia Noir or do I want to relax with my Hinoki Cypress?
And here we have ended up with the great problem of our industry. I would love to be able to smell these things that Lisa is describing, but of course, we don't have smell-o-vision on our internet right now, so can't do it. But, and I mean, when we're making our products and stuff too, you just wish that people could kinda get because the smell is really part of the whole experience, you know? It's,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so being able to describe those scents too is that's an art, that's for a whole other podcast, being able to write great descriptions for these scents. So we'll leave it there. But it's been so great to have you, Lisa. I learned a lot myself, and I'd love to have you back on another show at some point.
Yeah, anytime. This was a lot of fun, Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.